So, as you know, we've been covering the 8th congressional primary here in Illinois for the better part of many months. And it is such a fun race to cover. I've covered a few in the past, but this has definitely been one of the more interesting ones. And it's been great to meet so many amazing candidates who are running in this race. As I always like to say, it's an embarrassment of riches, and all of these candidates are better by a mile than what the other side could ever offer. And so, I think it's important to spotlight these people and talk about some of the amazing, cool things that they are advocating for, their policy specializations, all that jazz. We had on Dan Tully, of course, with his foreign policy experience to talk about all the Venezuela chaos. Today, I'm excited to have another returning guest. She was with us back in September, and she has been leading the charge in this race to talk about AI, the economy, the future of jobs and employment, and so much more as we enter into this incredibly unstable and evolving world with all the world of tech ahead of us. So here to talk about all of that stuff, in addition to the headlines, the race for Congress, and a special event that we'll give a shout out to in just a few, I am joined by candidate for Congress, Sanjyot Dunung. Sanjyot, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Ishan. It's wonderful to be back, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I'm so excited for our discussion. Let's get right into it. So there is a lot that is happening in our world, and I want to get to jobs and AI and all of that because I remember in the last interview, we had such a great discussion. We had to conclude because of time, but we are going to hit all of that today. But I'm sure, as you do know, we have had a lot of chaos unfold in the last few days since over in South America with the Trump administration's recent actions out in Venezuela. For viewers who don't know or need to be caught up to speed, the United States on Saturday conducted a series of strikes in the capital of Caracas, extracted the president or dictator, former president, we're unclear as to what the title is now, but Nicolas Maduro, the then leader at the time at least, from the country, and his wife, Celia Flores. They are now in U.S. custody. Just a few moments ago, before recording this, he was arraigned in court. He pleaded not guilty. Right now, the situation on the ground in Venezuela is incredibly confusing. That is what I'm also hearing from people on the ground in Venezuela. But the vice president, who is now the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, is seemingly the one who is in control over there. Sanjyot, a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces. I wanted to get your reaction to this news and just how you're making sense of all of this.
Well, let's first start out by recognizing that this is sort of an old, tired playbook. A president who is failing at home with miserable ratings, with challenging issues, not delivering on the economy, the Epstein files, a number of things. The old playbook is create a distraction, a military distraction overseas to sort of rally the troops, if you will. So we've seen this playbook before. It has no strategy. It is all about chaos and uncertainty. But having said that, let's just recognize a couple of things all at the same time, because the truth is it's still unfolding, right? We're literally in day 3, 48 hours later. And by the time this releases and in another week or two, we still have. So it is clear that this president has no strategy. His day after, if you will, to a military mission has no strategy what we are going to do in Venezuela, whether we were even within legal bounds. I know there's a lot of questions that have yet to be answered. And I'm hoping that this Congress will do their job and ask those tough questions and make sure not to authorize additional funding for the military operation. Having said that, there is no question Maduro stole 2 elections. He was a drug lord. There was an indictment for him back in 2020. He is well known within Venezuela and the region as being an authoritarian warlord. 8 million Venezuelans left Venezuela in the last decade. So we understand that conditions on the ground were not favorable. And really, we hope that Venezuelans will have the opportunity to freely elect their next leader. I know Machado has certainly already been elected. I'd like to see her be able to take the reins. But we can't go around being the world's policeman. We can't go around just arbitrarily going in and taking dictators that we don't like. That is a breach of the world order, but quite frankly, the US has led for the last 80 years. And Trump has taken a hammer to any kind of world order, but he has no idea of what to replace it with. So this idea that it's going to be the Dunroe, right, with the Monroe Doctrine with
Oh
a
my
Donald,
gosh.
I know, crazy, right? But the idea that we're going to somehow police the Western Hemisphere and leave China and Russia to theirs is deeply troubling. I worry about the message that China, Russia, Iran, our adversaries, received over the weekend. It's twofold, right? The first is, are they within their bounds to be able to do whatever they'd like to do within their hemisphere? Very troubling if that's a message that they received. I also want to make a note to say that they're also privately, and I had a lot of security briefings over the weekend with folks who are in the defense and the military space. I sit on the board of the Truman Center for National Policy. Privately, China and Russia took note, right? Our military, thankfully, showed its might, its prowess, and its capability to be able to conduct a mission that none of those countries could ever do. So certainly they're all taking pause for the moment. I'm very grateful that no military servicemen or women were hurt or injured, but this isn't how you conduct foreign policy. Military action should be the last resort, and we certainly can't arbitrarily go around just invading countries without a strategy and arbitrarily.
Yeah, so a couple of questions that come right off the head that I want to hear from folks. First is more just about the situation. Obviously, our armed forces are good at what they do.
Yes.
They had a mission, they went in, and they did something. But the fact of the matter is that they are not trained to run countries. They're not trained to build nations. But in that press conference that President Trump had, he straight up just said that we're going to run Venezuela, whatever on earth that actually means. I mean, you mentioned Maria Corina Machado. She kind of got snubbed despite a lot of the sucking up that she's been doing over the past few months. I don't know, maybe was it worth it? I don't know if it was anymore. And then on the other hand, you have the vice acting president over there, Delcy Rodriguez, who is the oil minister who has been involved with a lot of the interests, the very declared oil interests of this administration. But again, she also has been issued threats. And then there's, of course, just the wild card of the White House. Like, you never know what they're thinking. Maybe they make Marco Rubio president of Cuba, governor of Venezuela, and the Shah of Iran tomorrow. I mean, for all I care, that's something I saw on TikTok. I thought it was funny, but it's incredibly serious. And it's like they're treating it like jokes. So as it stands right now, with all of this uncertainty, do you think we should be worried about the United States getting involved in another unnecessary foreign conflict or in another country that is once again miles away and we spend our tax dollars endlessly to no avail?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the American people, voters that I'm out in talking to in our district, this doesn't make their life better. If they've just lost their healthcare subsidy, this doesn't make their life better. If they're still worried about a job because they're displaced from AI, or if they're worried about childcare, elder care, this does not help them at all. So let's be absolutely clear. This is not in the interests of Americans on a day-to-day basis. This president, he's really a renegade. We know that, right? He just talks off the cuff. He says things without, and he's been doing this for a decade. So this should not surprise us, by the way.
Yeah.
The concept of nation building, we've already been down this path. We know it doesn't work. You can't drop bombs and try and put boots on the ground and think you're somehow going to install democracy. We tried that in Iraq. It did not work. Almost $1 trillion later, we realized it did not work. But more importantly, all the thousands of lives. I'm a military mom. This is not the kind of sacrifice we should be asking of our families. And just because nothing bad happened last Saturday to any military men or women does not mean that that it might not happen in the future. So I really worry about what this president is willing to risk, the lives of people, our taxpayer dollars, and certainly our global reputation.
Mhm.
Let's remember, post-World War II, there was an understanding of a post-World War II national order. It meant that we agreed upon rules, if you will, right? The idea that you didn't go into foreign countries, even our adversaries within reason, followed those principles. I know that Russia in Ukraine was perhaps the most egregious in recent years. That new world order is gone. And Trump has not thought carefully, nor has his team, about what happens next. And certainly Marco Rubio, if he's a smart man, which I hope he is, knows that there is no winning formula for him to try and run Venezuela sitting in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
It is a country that is on our border. We want them to be safe. We want them to be democratic, and we want them to be able to live their best life. It's worth remembering that just 10, 15 years ago, Venezuela was a rich country. It was considered an emerging market, which is a really coveted title. It brings in investment. It brings in all sorts of stature. Countries want to be considered an emerging market. And we know that the governments of Chavez and Maduro were deeply corrupt, squandered their oil gains, and did not do right by their people. But the Venezuelan people now have to choose their own leader. They have to have their own leadership make decisions about Venezuela. It cannot be coming from the US. We do not need a 50-second state. Like, this is just not a practical path forward. And most Americans know that. They do not want boots on the ground. They do not want a long-term involvement. I will say, Ishan, what worries me also is that this administration is testing, right? Can we get away with it globally and also with Congress? And I hope the
Yeah.
answer with Congress is no. I hope that the vote this week to curtail funds is passed, both with Republican and Democratic votes. Because what's next? Cuba? Iran? Like, how many countries does this president think he can arbitrarily go around using his hammer to bludgeon? It is not the kind of America that leads with ethics and values, and it's certainly not the kind of leadership that people will look to. We're losing our friends globally.
And I'm glad you mentioned the edge about Congress here. I mean, obviously,
Right.
the rhetoric around this has been so binary. It's either good or it's bad. I mean, I'm hearing folks on the ground in Venezuela. I've been in communication with people there who are telling me, yeah, there are tanks rolling outside their house, but they're celebrating in their dining rooms. Maduro was an awful guy, terrible, evil, brutal dictator. I mean, I made a video about this yesterday. I used a long list of adjectives, so I'll defer to that video. But just a terrible guy, period. And what I am hearing from on the ground in Caracas and across Venezuela is celebration, but incredible stress about the fact that this playbook is now being tested on their country, and so many mixed emotions. But yeah, bringing it back to the edge of Congress here.
Ishan, on that note, let me
Yeah.
just say you're absolutely right. The U.S. received over 700,000 Venezuelans who were fleeing the conditions in that country over the
Yes.
last decade, and the other 7 million went throughout Latin America. Many of them are grateful. I understand that. And absolutely, Maduro cannot be defended, but we
But
also
it's
needed to have a day after plan. It would be deeply troubling, and we'll see what happens in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It would be deeply troubling if we simply replaced one dictator with another. And the
exactly.
fact that we're in conversations with his administration and those who were working with him, both his vice president, the defense minister, and all those. It doesn't make good sense that we used taxpayer money for a military mission that didn't really achieve much other than just simply a changing of the chairs.
Right, like the most expensive arrest that I've ever seen
Yes.
ends with literally just a new face. Like it's so strange. But I mean, in all of this, I mean, let's note that there has been somewhat of a buildup. I mean, yeah, this did come kind of out of nowhere. Like we were surprised when we saw the news, but it's not to say that it came out of nowhere entirely. Like we had been seeing months of buildup with renegade actions, as one person put it to me in a private conversation along the coast of Venezuela, striking boats, oil tankers, all of this stuff. Congress, throughout all of that, a Republican controlled Congress, sort of kind of abdicated what authority they had in all of this. And I don't think this is necessarily a war, but the nature of these types of actions do require congressional authorization, or at least congressional input. The Trump administration literally just pulled all of this off and now has a briefing scheduled for 5:30 p.m. tonight. And Republican members of Congress are just clapping and saying, "Thank you, sir." But they have completely given up their authority. So, I mean,
Out
you
of fear,
mentioned the
by the
vote.
way, out of
Out of
fear
fear.
of retaliation. So, I have to say, I'd like to see them with some courage on the Republican side of the field. And I think that this is an opportunity for the Democrats who can bridge build
Mhm.
and make sure that there's a bipartisan opportunity to say this is a bridge too far, Mr. President. He has egregiously gone above and beyond unchecked presidential power. And we've been seeing that from day one when he fired the inspector generals, got rid of any sort of presidential oversight. By the way, there's a lot of parallels to this with the Nixon administration, and not just Watergate itself, but the whole period
Yes.
after, right? It is a reflection of the time period when the presidency as an institution went too far. It
Mhm.
tried to become stronger under Nixon. Nixon was egregious with his corruption. He used the office of the presidency to go after opponents. We're seeing deja vu. We're seeing a repeat of all of that. So it will be incumbent on the next Congress, because by the way, you're right. This Republican Congress has not done its job, but the next Congress, and hopefully it will be a democratically led Congress, and I hope to be part of it, we have to be more forceful. We have to
Mhm.
be more determined that within 2 years, we have to put some restrictions. So, for example, those inspector general positions, the 17 that were fired, should no
Yes.
longer be under the purview of the presidency, but should be under congressional oversight of the presidency. So there are ways to make sure that we curtail the power of the presidency. We know that Donald Trump is there for 3 more years. We just don't have an opportunity that is practical to be able to take him out of office. So we have to figure out how to limit the damage he can do while he's in office.
Correct. I mean, I totally agree on that front. And I don't know about this Congress, but yes, hopefully the next one does have a backbone,
Yes.
because it's so needed right now. We
Yeah.
need that leadership. Um, well, yeah, this is a very fast evolving situation. Viewers, we will be continuing coverage of this. We will continue to talk about this because as you might, the one takeaway you might have been able to pull from this entire chat was that, ooh, it's an evolving situation. We have
Yes.
no idea what's going to happen tomorrow morning. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But let's switch gears a little bit. So we are under 100 days. I think maybe under 75 days until the March
73 to
17th.
our election.
73. There you go.
Yes.
To the primary March 17th. Give us an update on the race. How has that been? How is the campaign going?
The campaign is going terrific. I'm loving being out talking to people despite the cold weather and the
Mhm.
snow. People have been very gracious and wonderful, and warm and welcoming, and just, really sharing what's important to them. Certainly, for example, just to sort of share this past weekend when we were out talking to people, everybody was glued to the news, trying to understand how it will impact their life today, but also they're just tired of the chaos and the uncertainty. Whether you, whatever you voted last year, wherever you sort of land on your political perspective, people want what they consider normalcy. I think that you just can live at a heightened state of anxiety for so long before you want to get off that train. And I am hearing overwhelmingly people want off the uncertainty train. They want off that chaos. And then they want civility back. I hear a lot of people telling me, you don't have to agree with your neighbor, but we want to just be able to talk to one another. Why is it that we've lost that ability? And what I say to people is, we've lost it collectively as all of us as neighbors. We can seize it back. We don't need to rely on the media. We certainly can't rely on this administration to bring back civility and decorum. We can bring it back ourselves and we can make it a priority. So a lot of people want to talk about that. And of course, people are worried. They're worried about what their pocketbook will look like. I hear a lot from people who tell me, I'm working two jobs and I still can't make ends meet for my family, between covering for healthcare and childcare and any other additional unexpected expenses, for example, utility bills going up or taxes, which is the big thing that everybody wants to talk about. So I think that people are very focused on how do we make life better here? Let's stop trying to fix the rest of the world. We need to fix ourselves first.
Right. And I mean, that is the wide consensus of what I hear from most voters, even in my own conversations, just with folks
Right.
at events and stuff and all that. Well, this primary is, of course, as I said at the top, very interesting, vibrant field, as I like to say. And for viewers, you get a special treat. You get to hear from all 8 of the candidates, including you, Sanjyot, next
Thank you.
Thursday, January
Yes.
15th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. It is going to be a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of attention for this program, and people want to hear live from who one of the people that will be their next member of Congress, because it's important. And in this moment, we need real leadership. And so, all 8 candidates, we expect to be there. And we are so excited. So stay tuned for that. You can watch that here on the Ishan S Show, or you can come in person. You can go find details online for all of that. But yeah, that's going to be a fun event, and we're so excited to have you there.
Thank
So
you. And thank you so much for doing it. I know it's a lot of work and you're doing it
mm,
with the other co-hosts, as
yes.
volunteer effort, but we deeply appreciate the opportunity to talk to folks because you are completely right. This is an important election in March because it's the first time we've had a competitive open primary in over a decade. And
Yes.
I always tell people, and people understand this, it's an opportunity to hear the different voices, to hear the different plans, the different experiences, and choose what kind of Democrat we want. We are all Democrats, and that is terrific. And I value the process of democracy. I think it's great. Although I'm kind of glad we're not in Illinois 9 with 19 different opponents.
Oh,
But
that'd be
it's
a big
important.
stage.
Yes, it's important for people to have a chance to hear the differences because it will make a difference in terms of what kind of Democrat can actually deliver solutions. A lot of what I talk about to people and what people are telling me, they're tired of sort of the rhetoric and they're tired of the performative. I get a lot of questions about what will you actually deliver, and they're very happy to hear that I have very specific plans and happy to go through some of those with you, including for
Excuse me.
AI and jobs as well.
Well, thank you for the amazing transition, because that is exactly what I wanted to talk about with you. The economy, affordability, obviously the 2 big buzzwords of the past few months. I think since the last time we've talked, Democrats have started to find their voice a little bit on this issue because somebody, knocked our leadership in the head and they finally understand that people can't pay for things. And it's a real struggle and it is widespread. It is a tragedy that cannot discriminate in this time, and this administration has not been helping one bit. Excuse me. And one of the had the full build up for the cough, one of the big important edges of all of this has been the advent of AI in our economy. One of the things that this administration has done is they have opened the floodgates without any real regulation, without any real governance, and they have now prohibited states, the big ugly bill, we still talk about that because yes, that is still a problem and it will be for a while. But they prohibit states from being able to regulate AI, artificial intelligence. We're seeing it unfold in front of our eyes in a new form every single day.
Right.
So as we enter this conversation about AI and our economy, I just wanted you to help us, contextualize and understand, like, what's the field we're dealing with right now? Like, what is this going to look like? And particularly for young people. I mean, it's my generation and my folks who I went to school with that are struggling the most with this right now because they're the ones who are not going to get those entry-level jobs because they're outsourced.
Absolutely. So, let me say, I'm an entrepreneur and a small business owner, and technology is a very core part of what we do. Education and learning technology. We focus on the content, but delivered on very diverse platforms. So, I'm all for technology and what it can do to help expand learning and training, but we really do need to have some guardrails. We don't know where AI is going to go. Let's just start with that. And anybody who pretends and tells you definitively they know exactly what AI will look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years is really not in touch with reality, because it is a fast evolving field. It is not like traditional technology where you programmed something for a definitive outcome. This is a generative.
Yes.
It is learning as it goes along, and it can learn differently. And I hear all sorts of examples of where it could exceed human intelligence in 10 or 20 years, depending on whose time frame. So let's understand that the guardrails that we want are simply to protect our children, to protect jobs and society at large, but in what I call incremental opportunities. So what do I mean by that? Instead of trying to have a law or a rule that is permanent, let me give you an example of that in a second. We need to be saying, here are the guardrails. We'll revisit the law in 2 years, 5 years, and refresh it to update with new progress or issues in technology. Where did we see this become a problem? In the 1990s, there was a rule put in place called Section 230, and it basically said you lovely little tech companies, Google, Facebook wasn't around yet, but later when it came, Microsoft, your early stage companies, we want to nurture your growth. So we're not going to make you liable, and you won't have to worry about liability issues. So it became a liability shield. So whatever goes on your platform or anything, we're going to let you be protected from that. Maybe that made sense in the 1990s. But fast forward, it's 2026. It no longer makes sense. These are tech giants. They are behemoths globally, and they should not have a liability shield which protects them more than any other company. They should be the same as any other company. I'm not looking to penalize them.
Yeah.
We now know, 15 years after the start of social media, that social media was one of the single most negative impacts on an entire generation of people for mental health and all sorts of issues. Why do we keep waiting for an accident to happen before we think about a sensible guardrail? With AI, we've already allowed these companies to be able to test freely with no liability on you, me, and everybody else. And unfortunately, some people have lost their lives. They've taken their lives because AI has sort of led them and facilitated suicide. We shouldn't have that. So we need some guardrails. I'm actually a fan of common sense, sensible national rules and not changing by state. And I'll tell you, as a small business owner, as somebody who it comes from that point of view, you are selling nationally from the moment you have a website. And I sometimes say a small business is selling globally. I've met folks who, make very nice food items or clothing items, and they ship around the world. So a website allows you to be global from the get-go. And so we need to make sure that we don't make it hard for businesses, because small businesses are the engine of growth, whether you're sitting in our district in Illinois or whether you're anywhere in the US. But we want to make sure that it's a level playing field, that small businesses and large businesses are playing by the same rules, that large businesses don't have an advantage. Let me give you the example of the liability shield. Google has a liability shield that I, as a small business owner I have a publishing content. I don't have that. We're liable for the content on our products, whereas Google is not. That doesn't seem very fair, does it?
Yeah.
So I think we need to fix some of these things. So to answer your question, because I know it was a long answer, we need to make sure that every 5 years we look at these rules and these laws to say, are they still valid? Do they make sense? And how do we update it with current trends in technology? And how do we make sure that we're protecting our young people and our jobs? And we'll talk about that in a second, too.
Yeah. Just to that point, I think one of the things that I wonder is, even we were discussing this even with Venezuela.
Right.
Congress is not very good at doing their job. History has proven that. They take endless amounts of time to do just about anything. And then with something like AI, I mean, the one clip that goes viral that comes to mind is the TikTok hearings. And all of those members of Congress over the age of 80 who have no idea what TikTok is or how any of it works. When we're dealing with a Congress that is that old and in many cases cannot really grasp what the future of AI is going to do to so many people, do you have the faith that even adding these types of sunsets for 5 years, 2 years on policy is going to be something that is effective, just given the way Congress operates?
Yeah, it's a very good point, right? So I think that people are ready for a new way of doing things. We all know that we need term limits. I'm actually signed on for term limits, and we can discuss whether it's 6 years, 10 years, 12, or 18. The number we can discuss, but it should be the Supreme Court, House, and Senate. The idea that you have a job for life is unheard of in any other place, and it should be unheard of in Congress. So let's start with the fact that we need term limits. And
Sure.
sometimes people will say to me, well, voters can just vote them out. No, the power of the incumbency is way too big, both by dollars, and campaign finance reform is also top of my list.
Hmm.
So we need to make sure that we get new people into Congress, but we need people with new ideas, new solutions, and new leaders, right? And that's why I'm running. I was on Biden's foreign policy working groups. I was helping to boost small business exports and create jobs. I was using the combination of my private sector, my years as an educator as well, because I work on international business and global management. I write 2 textbooks, and
Yeah.
also the practical side, right? We need people who have actually walked the walk and can understand how to operationalize it. But the idea that you're going to be there forever is where the obstacles that you show. I will say, I think you're going to get a new group of people, or maybe I'm hoping voters will recognize it, that people who want to actually deliver solutions and don't want to just be constantly worried about keeping their job or reelection. I think that good people in Congress or the Senate should really be focused on, what can I deliver? Voters should hold us accountable. We call them KPIs, key performance indicators. Check to see, did your congressperson, did your senator actually deliver something that made your life better or safer or created opportunity for yourself or for your family? And that's how we keep people sort of on their toes and very focused on sort of the agenda at hand. You may be surprised that the number of people who vote in a primary are so few, But
Yeah.
this is the opportunity to say, hey, listen, I care about my future. I'm going to exercise my right to vote. So I gave you two plugs there, one for the right to vote and also a little bit about where we can see Congress changing. And I think Congress will change.
And I think, speaking of new, fresh ideas, to reel it back to our conversation from a moment ago, you have a really interesting, robust idea. I know we kind of scratched the surface of that idea in the last interview, but this is one that I really, I don't mean to editorialize too much, but one that I'm really impressed by, and it is one that speaks straight to me because this is one that helps my generation, and it is. I'll tell you, it is one of the topmost concerns. I know countless people who have switched the trajectory that they of their lives from what they had initially planned out. Everything so meticulous with passion and everything. They have to change course because they don't think they have a future anymore because of how AI has infiltrated into technology sectors. And that has to do with jobs, and that has to do with economic futures. At this time, Gen Z is facing one of the highest rates of unemployment. Gen Z men in particular are having real struggles. And as I saw one pundit put it, you're never in a good situation when you have a bunch of young guys who are jobless and don't have anything to do. It's never a great thing. So please do tell us a little bit about your jobs program, one of your key proposals that is really responsive to the times right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So listen, just like what you've been seeing, I've been deeply troubled by the 12, 13% unemployment rate that we're seeing for fresh college graduates. Why does that matter? Your first job is where you get your training. You get your skills training, you learn your professional socialization. It helps you get your second job. It helps you sort of stabilize yourself into your 20s so that you can hopefully one day start a family, get rooted into your community, and be a productive member. If you don't get that first job, everything else is like a domino effect, right? You're not going to be able to feel like you've embraced adulthood in the steps that we are typically used to seeing for adulthood. Get a home, get a family, and take care of that. So I really want to talk about how do we make sure people get the skills training that they need for those first few jobs and those first few years. My idea is actually to go a little earlier. We know that AI is displacing jobs, especially things that people would do right when they're out of college in a first job. Anything that is road or mechanical, AI is going to be able to do, whether you're an analyst, whether you're accounting, whether you're any range of service areas, computers. I know that you and I have talked about how many people going into computer science have had to pivot because that first level of computer science can be done by AI. And we're seeing that with the layoffs from Microsoft and Google and Facebook and all the other typical training grounds. We can actually, and my idea is to resurrect some plans that have actually been implemented before, but give a national training program fresh out of high school so that everybody has the opportunity to develop skills for a year. You could go into the military. That's certainly one path, but that is not the only path, right? But that also, as a military mom, it's something that has influenced how I see people from coming from all backgrounds and coming together with a shared vision and a shared purpose of a better America. You might go and you might work as an assistant for an EMT. You might work in a smaller town. You might do any number of skills training, but it gives you a year to be able to get tangible work experience and skills development. At the end of that year, you might be able to then go on to vocational training if that's the path that meets your needs. You might go to a 2-year college degree or a 4-year college degree. But doing it right after high school is what I consider the great equalizer, right? It puts everybody on the same footing and everybody, no matter where you come from. Now, you may say, how are you going to live in that 1 year if you're not collecting a little bit? We right now give people anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 as a stipend, even just to go through grants to go to a community college, or even as a grant to go to a four-year college. I want to take that money and I want to give people that as a stipend. Pay your bills, pay your gas, pay your cell phone, be able to survive. We might add a little bit from the private sector business that you might be working with, or the entity that you might be working with. So I call that a public-private partnership of this internship program. But what it does, it gives you a chance to develop your skills. You have some money to be able to pay your bills, and you get some tangible work experience that you can then translate into your next career. I believe that we can use AmeriCorps. I know that there have been issues that have been raised, but this is the thing. When you've had a program that has partially worked, you can fix the issues, but we know it can be done. Work for America, Teach for America, AmeriCorps. It's almost sort of an internal Peace Corps, if you will, in the U.S. But most
Yes.
importantly, it puts everybody on the same page and gives them a chance to get those skills. And I believe that we can create a beta. And my hope is to lead the bill to be able to make Illinois a beta for something like this.
So, with the implementation of a program like this, I mean, obviously, you mentioned the undertaking. Logistically speaking, do you think, this is something that the United States government could handle just on one go, or do you think this is something that we have to transition in over time?
A transition, obviously, which is why I said there would be a beta, but we do
Yeah.
have a prototype in some of these other programs, right? And we do have the ability. I've met with a lot of folks who are running vocational training schools. I know as a small business owner, there's a lot of public-private partnerships where small businesses, for example, would love to have somebody come in and be an intern or work with them as an apprentice for a year. A small business doesn't always have the money to be able to train somebody, because you're not necessarily contributing to the bottom line right away, right? You have to be trained. The stipend helps. So there is an
Mhm.
opportunity to be able to do that. There are organizations. I know here in Illinois, I've seen a number of programs that already do that for vocational training and also public-private partnerships. We just need to make it an option for more students so that they have a pathway to be able to develop those skill sets earlier on.
And it's great. I mean, we need to be addressing things at the root cause, at the
Right.
root of all of this from the start. I think the
Yeah.
biggest mistake we repeatedly make, and no one can beat us at it sometimes, is
Right.
that we are very reactionary. We see
Yeah.
the problem and then we respond. Better to maybe create and foster an environment where we see folks gain those important skills. I mean, it's hard to stress it enough times, but like I talk to people because they are my peers who, I mean, hell, I mean, I'm concerned about this stuff myself. And I know folks who are even at a younger age who are actually thinking about this stuff I would have never been thinking about even when I was at that age. So having some sort of clarity, having some sort of, guidance in this moment of change, I think is just so important. So thank you
And,
so much.
and and you make a really good point about that, because I think too much of Congress and our leadership, House and Senate, is reactionary. We
Mhm.
wait for the problem to become so apparent rather than have a task force early on. I was really pleased to be on the working group task force about small business exports. And even now, I sit on the National Small Business Association, largest nonpartisan business advocacy for creating jobs and making sure we help our small businesses in DC, because it's a complementary thing. Small businesses are the backbone of our community and they create the jobs. I sit on the AI task force. It's not to say that we have the answers today. It's
Yeah.
that we have to be having the conversation. And I expect to be sitting on an AI task force when I'm in Congress, as particularly as it relates to jobs, small business, and education, because we need to proactively say, where do we need to be helping our communities? Where do we need to be helping with our students? And let me just add, you mentioned a little earlier about the 2 and the 4-year college degree. I also plan to introduce a bill to reduce the student loan interest for colleges. It may surprise people to know that Congress sets that student loan interest, whether you're
Yes.
military or whether you're regular. Why are we making money off of our students? Why is it set at 6 or 7%? All those intermediate middlemen. We know from COVID that we can have the Treasury do direct loans and we can do it at 1 or 2%. It should be a 1% processing fee, and that's it. Shame on us for making money off of our next generation when we should be investing in them. And then I would look to also partner with our colleges to say, hey, listen, why are you all charging the same amount? It's almost like a cartel environment. Too often we
Yes.
talk about student loan forgiveness and we give colleges a free pass. Why are we doing that? We need to be saying, colleges, bring down your costs. There is no reason that a family should be paying mid-five figures for a single year of college. That is ridiculous. But what's happened is that colleges know that anybody else can go get a loan. So what do? They jack up the price because they figure you'll just take out the loan. That's wrong. So we need to fix college finances. We need to reduce the interest loan that students are paying or families are paying. There are a great many families as well. That's
Yes.
under Congress, and I intend to be a leader on that.
That is so important. And of course, I am a proud Badger. But admittedly, they're also in that cartel
Yeah,
of higher education, and they are jacking up prices, and it has become so inaccessible. And I think every opportunity for education should be an option, but for too many people, that option and many other options for that matter are eliminated just because of that cost barrier.
right.
And you mentioned the student loans thing. I mean, I speak from personal experience. I know exactly what that's like, and it's a shame that you're making a quick buck off of people like me and my friends and my peers and viewers of this interview right now. I think this is something that resonates deeply. So I really appreciate you bringing attention to that. And
Absolutely. And by the way, I'm just surprised that nobody in Congress has already done this. And that's also, you know, a a shame on the Dems as much as a shame on the Republicans, because these are things, and I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier about the age and stage of life of many of the folks in the House and the Senate. If you don't have any firsthand experience with what's going on a day-to-day life, and it's not just can you walk in a grocery store and know what the price of milk or eggs are, but if you don't have families that are currently in college or have experienced this, you don't realize how burdensome it is. Childcare, college price. So I think that this is where new leaders, new ideas, and new solutions are essential to fixing things that will impact all of our pocketbooks.
exactly. I mean, if your great grandkid is the one going to school, I feel like you might be a little disconnected. I always think of, I don't know if you've watched Arrested Development, but I always think of the episode where I forget. The guy that the youngest one who asks his mom Lucille Bluth about how much a banana costs, and she's like, I don't know, $10 for a single banana. Like that is where my mind goes every single time I hear about the out of touch nature sometimes of Congress. I don't know, $10 for a banana. um, but all of that is to say that we need good new leadership, folks who are Buster, that's his name. But we need good new leadership who are ready to respond to these emerging
Yeah.
issues ahead of us.
And the ones that have been around for a while. I'm a workhorse person. It's easy to get up on a soapbox and be performative, but that's not what people want. And that certainly
No.
isn't going to make people's lives better. I'm the kind of person who rolls up their sleeve, and these are just some of the ways, but I'm also the kind of person who likes to listen and hear. There may be problems that I don't know about. I every day I go out and talk to voters, I hear something new, right? And
Yes.
I'm constantly thinking, "Oh, that's interesting. How do we solve that problem?" So it's also a frame of how you manage, how you lead. Are you really interested in making people's lives better? And those who know me will tell you that's what makes my day. That's what makes the sun go up in my day, is to figure out how to problem solve.
Very, very true. And I guess one more question that I have about this stuff, and then I do want to talk a little bit of politics for just a moment.
Sure.
Um, so, if you have a 10-year outlook of all of this,
Mhm.
what would you say is the biggest challenge that we should be keeping an eye out for? But also, what is the biggest opportunity that you think we have as a country? Because I know the opportunities, we can't even contemplate some of them yet, but
Right.
they're there.
Absolutely. So I will say, because it all roads, if you will, kind of lead to it. So AI and innovation are both the biggest opportunity and also something that concerns me in terms of the guardrails. And when I say that at the macro level, we don't actually know what's going to unfold, but let's take a look at where America has excelled. First off, we are the most innovative country in the world. And that's just cultural, right? We love to say, rather than saying can't be done, we love to say, how can it be done? And that's personally my motto, by the way. I always like to say that our company, Atma Global, we were recognized by Fast Company as being one of the most innovative. And it's an innovation mindset. And the innovation mindset is really about how do we do this, right? How do we solve and do this? One of the other things that makes America so great is our immigrant heritage, right? Whether you came 4 years ago or whether your ancestors came 400 years ago, immigrants are our secret sauce. And the immigrants who come here, 90% of them are economic immigrants. They come here in pursuit of the American dream. They love this country. They want the work ethic. They want to be able to know that if they work hard, they will see the benefits. Let's get that back. Let's sort of reinvest in that American dream, because that's where it's going to take us in terms of the next 10 years. If we want to stay a global leader in AI, in innovation, in everything, and attract the best and the brightest, the things we need to fix are about being welcoming to people, making sure everybody can access going to school regardless of your pocketbook, regardless of your family heritage, and really make sure that we have some well understood guardrails for how we use AI on a day-to-day basis. We definitely want to nurture and inspire that innovation, but we don't want to be harming young people. So there's a delicate balance in all of that.
Very much so. So I did want to tap into politics just one more time before we conclude here. Um,
Absolutely.
so with the eighth congressional race, and maybe you can have your opinion informed based on what you're seeing nationwide. A lot has changed since we last spoke. Obviously, with the wins for Zohar Mamdani on one side, you have Abigail Spanberger winning on the other. The theme that we've picked up on, and at least what I've been preaching, has been that the Democratic Party, I don't think really at this moment cares about progressives or centrists or whatever. They care about having fighters, as opposed to capitulators, as Vice President Kamala Harris put it. So from what you see, and I'm not asking you to call out anyone, I'm not asking you to name names, but with the state of the Democratic Party right now, as as a collective, we're figuring out our voice going into this new election year. Do you think the party has become a party of fighters, or are we still in transition?
Um, I'll answer we're still in transition. And let me just say a few notes about that. For the last 7 years, I've been involved in helping with red to blue races, flipping House seats around the country, even in Illinois, a couple of the districts that we were very happy to make blue. So I've been very involved in understanding the mechanics of campaigning, mechanics of communications, and a lot of frustration over the years, although I think we're getting better. Here's what I'm hearing and here's what I'm seeing when I'm out in the district. And I think this kind of will answer your question even better. When I'm talking to people, a lot of people will say to me, don't use the word fighter anymore, being candid. They want people who actually focus on delivering solutions. They're
Hmm.
they're kind of like on the next wave of terminology, if you will. And I say this because sometimes I use the word fighter too. I'll fight for something because it's natural. It fits the sentence, if you will. But
Right.
the mindset that's evolving is people who may have stayed home last year, people who may have voted for this current administration, for example, aren't happy, right? They definitely did not expect chaos and uncertainty. They did not expect an administration that is very focused on nation building overseas and taking resources away from Americans. So they want to come and find another place, another political place, if you will. Democrats have still not earned their trust as being the party that can deliver that. So that's where I spend a lot of my time. I call it hashtag rebuilding the base. It's really about saying, listen, we may have dropped the ball on a few things. I'm certainly aware that in many of the Democratic cities, despite our best hopes, we didn't build enough housing. We didn't implement enough things. Our rules and our regulations got in the way of practical common sense. So that's what my campaign is grounded in, is common sense, responsible change. We can cut out waste. We can cut out efficiency. We can make people's lives better, but without all the drama, without all the performative rhetoric. And that's what I'm hearing people want. And I think that's what they want of Democrats in general. Give me a solution. Don't just give me a speech. And I hear that everywhere I go. I think that's going to lead into this year. You started a conversation about affordability. And I'll give you a small example about that. Affordability, absolutely. Who can be against affordability? But I hear from voters, tell me what you mean by that. Tell me how you're going to solve that. And so I
Right.
talk very specifically about making sure that we give people, one of the things I want to do is address the income and poverty thresholds, which, by the way, are based on archaic formulas from 1963, and we need to update them to 2026 realities. But changing those formulas is actually a cascading impact for getting subsidized access to childcare, elder care, disabled care, student loans, your FAFSA, for example. All of these things come from that formula. That's what's going to make people's lives better. And that's the kind of solution that people then say, aha, I get it now. I get where I can see the difference in my life. So don't be surprised if you start seeing more Dems talk about real solutions and not just sort of using the word affordability.
That is a great insight into that. I do like the idea that we are shifting in our terminology because yes, the thing in common that I think are two very different ends of the Democratic Party spectrum had was they were both solutions oriented. They
Yes.
both gave literal answers as opposed to just, fluff. So I am going to be keeping an eye on this. I'm sure you will as well. Naturally, maybe we're the ones keeping an eye on you with what you guys are
I hope
saying as
so.
candidates.
Hold me
Oh yeah,
accountable. A, I hope to win your trust and vote. And B, I hope to continue the conversation well after hopefully winning the primary. But I want to
sure.
be held accountable. And
And
that's,
yes,
and I'm willing to do that as somebody who's been accountable as a business owner. I get it. And I think that we should start as voters expecting to hold our elected officials accountable. What have you
perfect.
delivered? What can you do?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. That's the goal of the show here. Um, Sanjay, we are running out of time for our interview today. This was so great. But before we do conclude, are there any parting thoughts that you wanted to share with my audience?
I'm always happy to come on. So happy to come on anytime there's a topic. And hopefully we're not dealing with additional countries on the national security side, but happy to
Yeah.
do that. I'm on the board at the Truman Center for National Policy. So really talking about economic security and national security are in my wheelhouse. But let me just say, I think the most important reminder, if I can, is early voting starts in early February. Please, 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 everyone who's listening, go vote. I hope to earn your trust and your vote, but no matter who you vote for, your vote matters. I hear so often from people when I'm out, oh, I'm not going to vote. It doesn't really matter. I vote, or who cares if I vote? The answer is it does matter. You have a voice, use it as an opportunity to say, this is what I think is important. Take a look at all 8 candidates in our race. Make sure that you find the one who aligns with your priorities and your values, and then vote for them. And whether you're in Illinois 8 or Illinois 9 or 2 or 7, Illinois has a very exciting moment going on. We have 4 congressional seats. That's 25% of our delegation up for grabs. The tone, the demeanor, and the capability of our delegation can change. And you and all of the folks who are listening can help to make that change. So I encourage you all to please vote and vote early.
Yeah, this isn't a very exciting moment in Illinois right now, and there are so many different voices and conversations going on. I've had an absolute blast covering all of it. So definitely a little biased there, but I would love to see more of this going on in the future as well. But we are going to be concluding now, but you can catch me and Sanjyot and the entire 8th Congressional District primary field next Thursday, January 15th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. for a special Ishana Show hosted congressional primary debate. We are going to talk about a lot of important topics. You will get to hear live from all of the great candidates running in this race. So Sanjyot, looking forward to seeing you there and looking forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Looking forward to it. And thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing everybody who's listening next Thursday. And I welcome your questions, and I look forward to meeting people.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.